Good afternoon, Mr. Guido Ambroso. It truly is a great pleasure to have you here today. My name is Fatima Jabarova, and I'm a grade 11 student of the Modern Educational Complex named in honor of Heydar Aliyev. This interview is dedicated to the UNHCR Refugee Challenge. And now I would like to yield the floor to my co-host, Rafik, and proceed with the Q&A.
Hello, Mr. Guido Ambroso. My name is Rafik Asimov. Now I'm also 11th grade student of Modern Educational Complex named after Heydar Aliyev. So first and foremost, I would like to mention that it's a great pleasure to have you today interviewed. We are amongst luckiest, if not the luckiest people around the world to have you today here. So we have created some questions, and these are actually some questions that vast majority of people around the world are really keen on finding out the answers about these. So if you don't mind, I'll kindly ask them to you.
Yes, yes, thank you. So I'm Guido Ambroso, the UNHCR representative in Azerbaijan. I have been in Azerbaijan now almost 3 years this time, but I was in Azerbaijan probably before you were born, because I was here with UNHCR from 1995 to 1997. So if you allow me, even though it's not directly related to your questions, maybe just 2 minutes of overall context. So when I was here in the mid-90s, of course, Azerbaijan was just emerging from the first Karabakh war, and there were hundreds of thousands of internally displaced persons all over the country, many of them living in really difficult situations, substandard accommodation. And the UNHCR, together with the other agencies at the time, tried to help the government to put in place an emergency response plan. And I think we helped quite a lot. We constructed thousands of family houses for the internally displaced persons. But I don't want it to be too technical, but but we make a distinction between internally displaced persons and refugees, because although in many situations, like in the situation of Azerbaijan, the internally displaced persons that we call IDPs have fled because of similar circumstances as refugees. In this case was a war, occupation, and so on. But the difference is that internally displaced persons, by definition, they are citizens of the country in which they find themselves. So although they have difficulties, but they have certain rights that the refugees don't have, because, and this is not me speaking, but it's international law. And sometimes I have to say there is a bit of a misunderstanding of who is a refugee and who is not a refugee. But according to international law, a refugee is somebody who came from a foreign country and is not a citizen of the country in which he or she finds himself. So you can call anybody as you wish a refugee, but according to the legal definition, you cannot be a refugee in your country of nationality. So over the years, or at least until the recent conflict that started on 27th of September, UNHCR decreased a little bit its assistance for the IDPs, because in the meantime, Azerbaijan, became much stronger from a socioeconomic point of view, and these are its citizens. And then development agencies also started assisting. We always kept some project with the IDPs, particularly legal assistance, but not at the same level as the early 90s. On the other hand, we started increasing our program and also our advocacy for the refugees from foreign countries. But of course, until from the beginning of the 27th of September, the conflict, we increased our engagement with the IDPs and is ongoing now, to provide some humanitarian assistance to the displaced persons, newly displaced persons, as a result of the conflict, the 44-day, what is also now called the Second Karabakh War. So we have stepped up our program for the IDPs, but our core mandate remains the refugees. And I think your questions are mainly about the refugees. And for your information, there are 26 million refugees all over the world. And there are big refugee crises as we speak in Africa, in the Middle East, and even in Latin America. There is a big problem with Venezuelans who are, they're really a bit of a mixture between migrants and refugees, but it's called a big refugee crisis. It's a refugee also crisis, a big, mega emergencies. Now, talking about refugees, and then you will ask the first question. So we follow the script. Sorry if I take, if I go a little bit off the beaten track.
No problem.
But, just to give you a little bit of context, there are nowadays 1,600 refugees and 275 asylum seekers. An asylum seeker is basically a refugee who has applied, but whose status has not been determined. So just to round the figure, well, let's say that we have 2,000 people in Azerbaijan who are refugees or asylum seekers from foreign countries. The majority of them, approximately 60%, come from Afghanistan. And almost all the refugees and asylum seekers from Afghanistan come from a minority in Afghanistan, which is called Hazara. And they are a religious minority because they are Shia, like in Azerbaijan, although Azerbaijan really is a secular country. But in Afghanistan, this minority is Shia, where the majority is Sunni, and they are persecuted not by the government, but by what we call non-state actors. I don't know if you've heard about the Taliban radical movement.
Yeah.
So that's why they're escaping. This is about 60% of our refugee and asylum seeker population. And the rest is made up of some people from the Russian Federation, particularly Chechen, not a big group, approximately less than 400. They're not new arrivals. They have been here for 20 years. And then we have a little bit of a mixture from Pakistan, from the Islamic Republic of Iran, from other countries in the Middle East like Syria, and very, very few from Africa, just a handful. These people, until recently, they are tolerated in Azerbaijan if they have papers from us, but unfortunately, they don't have a clear legal status. So they're a little bit in a legal limbo, but their integration is progressing, and the government is more and more granting some rights. For example, the children are allowed to go to school, primary and secondary education, and we manage every year to assist maybe 10 to go to the university, The big problem until last year was that they didn't have the right to work. They didn't have the official right to work. But thanks to the generosity of the Azerbaijani government from June last year, and particularly our main counterpart, which is the State Migration Service, they finally have been granted the right to work. They're also covered by the mandatory new law on mandatory health insurance, but they have some special problems. So we have some special programs for health and other activities. Sorry for the long introduction.
Nice.
And now you can start your questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for giving a clear insight to some terms that we haven't had a clue about before. So now I'd like to start off. So, Mr. Ambroso, what is the approximate number of refugees who are under the threat of COVID-19?
It's a good question. Of course, you know, we are all under threat in a way, in one way or the other. What our figures is that out of 2,000 refugees, maybe 26 got infected with the COVID disease, and 23 recovered, and unfortunately three passed away. The majority of them where the treatment was at home, although, as you know, there is no real treatment up to now. You have to just, you know, get good food, good you know, good vitamins, and so on. But except when it's acute, then you need, you know, the respiratory mask. So 26 were treated at home. So 26 treated, 23 recoveries, 3 deaths. Majority were treated at home, but 6 got were hospitalized. And currently there are no known active cases of COVID-19 among the refugees. I have to stress that I'm talking about the approximately 2,000 refugees from foreign countries, and I'm not talking about the approximately 650,000 internally displaced persons who are Azerbaijani citizens, and for whom we do not, as UNHCR, have any health program. There are some other agencies, and of course the government, they are citizens of Azerbaijan. So I just want to clarify that I'm talking about the 2,000 refugees and asylum seekers from foreign countries.
Well, thank you, sir, for your information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambroso. According to the World Health Organization, the first ever survey to assess the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on their mental and physical health, as well as their ability to work and support themselves, refugees were asked to grade the impact from a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being nothing at all and 10 being extreme. The average impact assessment was reported to be 7.5. Are there any strategies on how these numbers can be decreased?
Let's, well, first of all, you know, I'm not really a health expert myself, but what I can say that there was also a study carried out in Azerbaijan in general on the socioeconomic impact of COVID on the general population, and including, let's call them the marginalized groups like the refugees. By the way, I'm sure that you have heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, and the slogan is leaving no one behind. And, you know, these refugees are obviously the people who are more at risk of, not the only ones, but they are at risk of being left behind. So while there has been, you know, a bad impact on everybody, it has been worse on the refugees, and particularly for, at least from a socioeconomic point of view, particularly for one reason, because as I said, until last year, until June last year or July, they didn't have the official right to work. So they were partially dependent on external assistance, which is not good in the long run, because you develop what we call the dependency syndrome. But also last year we had to reduce our assistance because of budgetary restrictions. So even before the COVID, it was difficult for them to survive. And they were surviving mainly working in what they called the black economy, you know, doing, let's put it this way, not illegal jobs, you know, working without proper authorization. I think it's not only the refugees. I think even there are some Azerbaijani citizens who work without, you know, proper contract. But for the refugees, they had no choice. So they were working in what they call the gray economy, particularly in construction. So this means of survival practically disappeared because of the COVID. So they were really badly affected. So what we could do, what we did last year was to get emergency funds from my headquarters, and we did 2 rounds of extraordinary or emergency financial assistance to help them to minimize the impact of COVID on their livelihoods, on their ability to support themselves. We did 2 rounds of assistance. I think each family, well, depending on the number of children, I think, I can't remember exactly, but the assistance was approximately between 200 and 300 manat, depending on whether they had children or not. We did the 2 rounds. The first round was done in what I call a prehistoric way, because we did it since they don't have a legal status, they don't have a bank account, so we could not transfer money to their bank account, and they don't even have a debit card. So we had to go door by door. Luckily, we have all the names and addresses in our database, and we had to go door by door with our cars and our teams when there was the lockdown in April, May, with cash in envelopes. And by the way, I felt confident to do it in Baku, because the security in Baku is so excellent. This is, I mean, I have worked personally in places which are very dangerous and where, you know, there is a lot of criminality. So in other places, you know, it would not have been possible to go with, you know, UN cars, with envelopes, with cash. There might have been a security risk, but certainly not in Azerbaijan. So we did one round of assistance like that. And the second round, in the meantime, we had an agreement with Azerpost, the post office. We put in place a special agreement with them. And so the second round of assistance, instead of going door to door, we distributed through Azerpost, and the refugees could just simply go to the post office and show their own, you know, papers, sometimes that are documents issued by us, and they got their assistance. In addition, we procured and distributed almost 400 tablets, you know, I mean, mini computer tablets, and gave also 1 year internet subscription to help the kids to do online education. In addition, some with the help of some volunteers, with the help of also the government and some sponsors, we managed to donate, I can't remember exactly, but a few thousand food parcels for these refugees, for the refugees in general. So this is what we did, unfortunately, and now we are looking for funds. I hope that we will be able to get them soon. I think we will need to do at least one more round of extraordinary financial assistance for these refugees, because as we all know, you know, it has not gone away, and I think unfortunately that there will be still a few months of difficulties. So we will have to do a new round of assistance. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. That's actually very great that you have provided so much assistance and help to these refugees. Thank you very much for letting us know about it.
So, Mr. Ambroso, as we all know, many refugees living in shelters and centers have a limited access to information. Are there any awareness-raising programs organized to convey the messages about preventing the spread of coronavirus?
First of all, let me clarify that these refugees live mainly in individual accommodation. They don't live in collective centers. It is mainly the internally displaced who live, or who used to live, and some of them still live in collective centers. So they live in very small and cheap and rundown flats, but mostly they live in individual accommodation and not in collective accommodation. And yes, we try to spread some messages about with the the usual messages, you know, to social distancing, wash yourself, clean your hands, through our social media that are consulted consulted by the refugees, and we also have some hotlines. One other aspect that was important, and it is also thanks to the flexibility of the government, and particularly our main counterpart, which is the State Migration Service, with whom we have an excellent relation. An important aspect of the work was also that the renewal of some of their documents became more difficult because of the restrictions, you know, lockdowns. So maybe there was a danger that some of them might, you know, have their documents expired because physically it was impossible, or you know, even the counseling, you know, what used to be face-to-face to be distant. So we worked with the government that showed a lot of flexibility, that even if they have, you know, if the documents expired and it was impossible to renew them because of the COVID, it would be tolerated. We had to, like all of us, I think the whole world had to invent new ways of working, hotlines, distant interviewing in distance, and so on. But yes, we made some, we tried to spread the message about basic rules of what not to do for COVID mainly through our social media.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. We have one more question, and it is, how can you ensure that all the refugees have an opportunity to keep the sanitation norms? Do all displaced people have an adequate access to clean water and other health services?
Again, I am talking about the refugees and not the overall displaced persons. We have a special health program then, so generally, yes, I mean, first of all, this is also thanks to the generosity of the Azerbaijani government, that all the refugees, even if their legal status is still unclear, they have access to primary health care on an equal basis as Azerbaijani citizens. When there is something more complicated, we have a special program to assist them. But they're also covered by government plans for COVID as long as they fulfill the criteria. I think right now the preference is given for those who are 65 years old and above. So even if they're refugees, they can have access to vaccination. So for health, they're pretty well assisted. For water, I believe that all of them, you know, even if it is a rundown flat in somewhere in the periphery of Baku, I think that they have a running water. In addition, we have given them some special hygienic kits, particularly for young women. That's all what I can say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambroso.
Well, thank you, sir. And also, what measures are taken to ensure that displaced people maintain social distance in overcrowded shelters?
As I said, the overcrowded shelters are for the displaced persons, not for our refugees. But we have one refugee community center, which is not a place where they live, but it's a place where they meet and where we had some community-based activities. So we had to close it down for a while. And also, for example, in this center, we also do some interviews. We interview the refugees. We had to build a new interview rooms, which is, I don't know if you've seen like in the movies where, there is a screen and you speak behind the screen. Unfortunately, it looks a little bit when you're talking with a prisoner, although it's not the case. It's done only to prevent the spread of the disease. Let me also add, I don't want to get too technical, but too complicated, but that while for the refugees, in my organization is together with the government, because we always work with the government, but we are responsible mainly for everything. But for the displaced persons, we as UNHCR, as I said, we are engaged. We have always been engaged with the legal assistance, lawyers. And now for the emergency, we are giving some humanitarian emergency assistance. But for other sectors or other areas of intervention, other UN agencies are responsible. For example, for health, and I stress for the internally displaced, which are Azerbaijani citizens, it's WHO, the World Health Organization, that is responsible. So now we have reopened the community center, but of course we are very careful about how many people can come at a given time, because we of course have an interest to make sure that the norms of social distancing are respected.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. As you already know, that the vaccination plan in the world and in Azerbaijan has already started, and we wanted to ask you, where do refugees stand in this vaccination plan, both in the world and in Azerbaijan?
It's a big question, in the world, and it's I think everybody. I will not comment on where the Azerbaijan stands in particular. Maybe this question is better asked to the World Health Organization. I think every country in the world is struggling to increase the pace of vaccination, and I think you know it like me, that everybody is rushing in a way. It has almost been a miracle that there are 4 or 5 vaccines within 1 year, when normally it takes many years to develop a vaccine. Of course, some procedures had to be accelerated, but I know that the vaccine is currently offered in 162 state medical facilities. And as I said, the refugees have, as long as they meet the criteria of the general population, they are afforded the same treatment and this is very good, and it's really commendable. I think that one important message is that all over the world, including in my country, which is Italy, And I remember in the early days when the COVID was appearing here, we were first talking about COVID in Azerbaijan. There were people, I call them negationists, you know, that thought that this virus does not exist, that this virus is just like a normal flu, and they were very, very wrong. I remember some people, because my country, Italy, was one of the first to be hit in Europe. And I remember some people, even some young people here, Azerbaijani young people, who were doubting. And they were saying, but do you personally know somebody who was who died of COVID? I said, not yet. Well, by now I know. But, you know, in one city, not far from Milano, which is my city, at one point in March, and this is actually 1 year ago, there was a line of 20 Italian army trucks to take away the dead bodies. And when you see these pictures, you say this is true. You know, it's not just an invention of the media or so on. And unfortunately, you know, you read a lot of rubbish or fake news on internet. You know, there are also some people who think that the vaccines will kill you. And well, the vaccines. So I think it's our responsibility to tell, for us, to the refugees, but to the UN staff and to everybody, to you know, that as soon as you have the opportunity, to take this opportunity and to be vaccinated, so you help to protect yourself, and hopefully you protect the others, and hopefully, inshallah, in a few months we will see the end, the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, to this day, there are some people who still doubt the virus, but it's very inevitable to still be like that at this point.
Well, Mr. Ambroso, what special measures are taken regarding the impact of novel coronavirus on the displaced people in Azerbaijan?
Well, you know, I mean, displaced or refugees, the measures apply to everybody. You know, they apply to the general population, and in fact, it's important that there is no discrimination. You know, that a group, particular group, is not penalized. I think these measures of social distancing and apply to everybody, not just to the refugees. Otherwise, I think I have already covered, you know, the important thing. And I want to express my thanks to the government. The most important thing was that even if they don't have a clear legal status, that they have access to the state programs like everybody else, because it's in everybody's interest. Because if you keep one group, you know, not outside of the available medical assistance, this group might, you know, continue to be infected and be dangerous. And be dangerous to the others. So from health, and that they have, yeah, access to vaccine. Otherwise, from a socioeconomic point of view, I have said that, you know, they need some special assistance because their socioeconomic basis was particularly affected. Yeah, that is all. And well, my other point is beyond the vaccine, and this is very important to convey this to the refugees, that Unfortunately, the right to work came more or less at the same time as the COVID hit. So we were forced to give them emergency assistance for the COVID. But my job and my colleague is to tell to the refugees that this is emergency assistance because of COVID, but now that you have the right to work, you should take this opportunity to be self-sufficient and not to be dependent on external humanitarian assistance. And that's our, the ultimate objective is that they become self-sufficient and integrated in a similar base, similarly to Azerbaijani citizens. Of course, they will not be citizens, but hopefully they will have many other rights. Because on the other hand, we should be careful as UN not to make these people privileged. Because if you have the right to work, if you know Azerbaijani, and by the way, there are some of these refugees, you know, some were born in Azerbaijan, some arrived when they were 3 years old, many completed primary and secondary education, and so they speak perfect Azerbaijani. Others don't because they arrived maybe, you know, one year ago. But the objective is indeed to integrate them and to make them self-sufficient and not a special, you know, privileged group that will be dependent on humanitarian assistance for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's a really exquisite move that all the refugees are getting informed properly about the happenings around the world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. As you probably already know, our school is taking part in the Model United Nations Refugee Challenge to make our contribution to resolving the current situation. What else do you think school students can do to launch public awareness campaigns on this particular issue?
I think the first thing in Azerbaijan is, I think there is still a lack of understanding about who is a refugee. And I think that there is, and it's understandable, it's totally understandable because, you know, Azerbaijan underwent the 2 Karabakh wars and so on. But to understand that apart from, you know, the problems of the Karabakh war and the internally displaced persons, there are other people who come from foreign countries and who have been here and who are in need of international protection and assistance. And that, you know, after all, Azerbaijan has signed the 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees and the protocol. So to sensitize that there are also these people and that there are also big refugee crises around the world. And, you know, to think, not to think just about the sub-region here, but to think that there are big crises around the world. For example, as we speak, there is a very bad civil war in Ethiopia with tens of thousands of internally displaced in Ethiopia and refugees who go to Sudan. So I think the first thing is to become more familiar with these issues and to generate public support and public empathy. Finally, I don't want to, I'm not asking you donate, but I'm not at all asking, but I'm just telling you that UNHCR is dependent on voluntary contributions from governments. So we don't have a fixed budget that comes from New York. Every year we have to go and make an appeal, and we we get funds from many governments, particularly from the United States of America. They is our biggest donor, and then from Japan, from some and European countries, and we hope that other countries like Azerbaijan, you know, will become also a donor, not just for the refugees in Azerbaijan, but for the refugees worldwide, including in Africa, in the Middle East. I will stop here, but if you have any other question, I have another 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think we're done with the questions for today. It was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And I'd also like to mention that once more, it was a great honor to meet you today, and also to have you interviewed. It was even more exquisite. So we all appreciate your time. We have really learned a lot of new facts, and I really felt that my outlook has been broadened in a sheer frequency. So we all appreciate it. Thank you for new information, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure, and thank you for your interest and your engagement, and best of luck with your studies and with this challenge.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.